So, in this new week on the Sportsmax Zone, we're going to talk some track and field now. The curtain came down on the 52nd edition of the Carifta Games at the Hasely Crawford Stadium in Trinidad and Tobago on the Easter weekend. The Jamaicans once again topping the medal standings, though it was a less dominant performance than previous years on the track. The Jamaicans amassed 78 medals with 30 gold, 27 silver and 21 bronze. The Bahamas copped 16 gold in their haul of 37 to finish second in the table. Meanwhile, home team Trinidad and Tobago secured 25 medals, 9 gold, 6 silver and 10 bronze, followed by Grenada and Antigua and Barbuda to round out the top 5. There were many standout performances at the three-day event, but it was Jamaica's Kamari Kennedy who walked away with the Austin Sealy Award after record throws in the shot put and discus for under-17 boys. Now joining us to review the Easter weekend's event is track and field analyst and lead writer at Sportsmax, Leighton Levy. Leighton, welcome to the Sportsmax Zone. We were previewing the event last week when we were on the show last, would it have been Thursday, and you did suggest that it would be a lot more competitive, this Carifta Games, than we had seen in many previous years, and you were right. And a lot of the biggest stars coming out of these games were non-Jamaicans, Leighton.
Yeah, absolutely, Lance. I mean, you could have seen it during the course of the year when you looked at the athletes from the region. The Bahamas have always been the perennial challengers. But then when you looked at the other territories like St. Lucia, who, by the way, missed out on one of their top athletes, Naomi London, who wasn't there. I mean, they could have probably picked up an extra medal had she been there in both the individual 100 meters and the 4x1 relay. And then you look at what Trinidad did in terms of the field events, especially, and the middle distances. You saw that there was a potential for the games to be a lot more competitive than in recent years. Jamaica had six fewer gold medals than the last time out. And of course, if you remember back in 2022, Lance, when we were hosting here in Jamaica, that Jamaica, I think, had 45 gold medals at the championships, were completely dominant at that meet. But in the past 3 years, we've seen some talent emerge from some of the other territories, primarily the St. Lucia, Trinidad, and of course the Bahamas, that made this year's competition a lot more competitive than many people would have liked. Well, many people who were from Jamaica would have liked, but certainly encouraging for people from the wider territory who now are showing that there's a lot more potential in the Caribbean than we've been able to unearth over the previous generations. And it's a good thing going forward, because I think, you know, it's I don't want to say it's boring that Jamaica continues to win. We have so many different advantages. We have a stronger track and field culture. We have a larger population than most of the Caribbean or English-speaking territories. So now we have a natural advantage. But when you see talent emerging from a country like the Bahamas consistently, and of course Trinidad now back in the fray, because the last few years have been a struggle for them, but it must have been very encouraging for the respective administrations to look at what's happened in Trinidad on the weekend and feel very encouraged looking forward to the future.
Yeah, can we give pride of place, though, to the Austin Sealy Award winner, Kamari Kennedy, Leighton, because it's not unusual for junior athletes to double in the throw, shot and discus, but for him to win the under-17 shot put and discus, both with record performances, spoke very, very highly of his efforts, and I would suggest was a shoo-in, given that, for the Austin Sealy Award, not to overlook the fact that there were several other outstanding performances that would have gotten in the conversation.
Absolutely, Lance. I mean, just to put that into context, young Egan Neely from the Bahamas was outstanding, 4 gold medals, including a record in the 4x4 relay, and he was imperious throughout the competition. 200, 400 double, and of course the 2 relays. Of course, you're talking about Shania Douglas, who also won 4 gold medals. You're looking at the brother and sister combination of Tyreek and Tanique. What's your last name again? Vincent from Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah. So you're looking at a situation where there are so many contenders for this, but there was, when you step back and look objectively at it, there was only one. This kid was remarkable. 1890, he shattered the shot put record. And then, of course, the impressive thing for me was how frequently he broke the existing discus record. It was 53.32, I think the record was. In every single throw of his competition, he broke the previous record. ending up at 60.84, 6.89, 6.8 something. You know, you're looking at a situation where this kid was absolutely outstanding. In the Caribbean, we tend not to place a lot of emphasis on the field events, unfortunately. But this young man was coached by Julian Robinson, you know, a family friend. It's outstanding. You remember Julian Robinson has also coached Frederick Dakers, and of course Travis Michael Dakers, of course, World Championship silver medalist back in 2019. Travis Michael has won several titles across the region from CSE coming up. So this is another talent that he's produced, and this kid was absolutely outstanding in his performances, because on the biggest stage in his age group in the region was when he brought his absolute best, and that obviously deserves the award.
Yeah, and you know, Leighton, you just briefly touched on the other individual performances, you know, while talking about the Austin Sealy Award winner. And I think this year, you know, a lot of the individual performances are worth talking about. I mean, we had one particular athlete, Michelle Smith, finishing the entire Carifta with a total of 9 medals. So that's an individual performance that, you know, should be celebrated. You mentioned the other youngster, Egan Neely, you know, finishing with a couple medals as well, and from various countries. Apart from, of course, the Austin Sealy Award winner, which other youngster really caught your attention, Leighton?
Mariah, how much time do you have? There are so many, but you mentioned Michelle Smith. I interviewed her a couple of weeks ago prior to the Carifta Games, where she said that she was done with the 800. She said it was fun while it lasted, but now she's moving on to the 400-meter hurdles, which is where she's at. So I expected her. I did ask her whether or not she expected any challenges going into the Carifta game. She said she didn't, and of course she proved it right. 56.60 was just 200 to a second outside of the record set by Sharon Salmon in 2018. But then she comes out for the 800, an event that she has not run for a long while, and then dominates that event, even though the Rose sisters were stressing her down the stretch. But the thing is that she's so good. I think if there's any Carifta athlete that will likely move on to a professional career if he chooses to and be successful, it will be Michelle Smith. But you can't mention outstanding performances without mentioning even Jamaica's Shaquan Gordon, who broke the record by Belician from Guadeloupe at the time, now competes for France. And of course Daniel Roberts, who, you know, both of them went under the previous record of 13.23, 13.19, and of course 13.21 for first and second. And, you know, of course we mentioned Neely, we mentioned Shania Thomas, you know, but there are so many other kids. I mean, I could go on. J.D. Emmanuel from St. Lucia, for me, is one of my favorites. Why? St. Lucia is such a tiny country, and we've seen since the emergence of Julian Alfred, we saw you know, young Naomi London, who of course weren't at the games because of injury, become the first St. Lucian athlete to win medals in the sprints. Double silver, I think it was last in 2023. Here comes J.D. Manuel, who pretty much nobody knew about. When I say nobody, I mean she wasn't on the radar, but here she was dominant in the under 1700 and 200. And I suspect that when you look at the time that she's run so far, this is a very, very talented young lady. And of course, the fact that she's home trained, home grown, speaks to what's happening in St. Lucia across the board, but in track and field, with the Olympic champion inspiring so many youngsters. This is perhaps the beginning of a new era for St. Lucia in terms of their sporting disciplines, in terms of course, in terms of track and field. And of course, we mentioned, of course, Gianna Paul, who upset the defending champion in Janae Digans in the long jump, just two centimeters outside of the record held by her compatriot. It was an outstanding performance. And of course, you know, you're looking at listen, I have to talk about this event, the 800 with Siobhan Jarrett and of course D'Angelo Brown from Grenada. That was one of the most outstanding performances. But the performances themselves as individual performances were outstanding. But there are so many more, Mariah. We could go on forever about it. But that's just some of the few that have come to mind, because these games, as much as I would have loved to have seen a fuller stadium or more, you know, significant crowd in Trinidad, but that's become the norm for track and field across the region now. But there were so many outstanding performances from so many outstanding youngsters from across the region, not just from one or two countries, that, you know, it augurs very well for Caribbean, for sports in the Caribbean, to track and field in the Caribbean, in the years to come, because these youngsters are likely to transition into glorious careers for their respective countries. Grenada, for example, they won a number of medals. They're likely to host the next Carista Games. Kirani James has been an inspiration for so many of them for so many years. And we're beginning to see the manifestation of that talent. I think 13 medals is what they won. And of course, it sets a nice platform for them potentially hosting the next games next year.
Yeah, for sure. And, Leighton, we spoke, at length about the individual performances, but what about the collective medals for the various countries? Any country in particular would have surprised you with their medal count? Or, of course, they didn't live up to your expectations? Jamaica, of course, with 30 gold, Bahamas 16, Trinidad and Tobago 9. If you look at the bottom of the graphic on the screen, you'll see Barbados with 1 gold and Aruba with 1. So, tell me.
I wouldn't say there was much of a surprise. I think when I spoke with the coaching staff of TNT, they said they were going to be stronger than they were before and expected to do well. They were aiming for second, but they ended up just a place down with 25 medals, of course, 9 gold medals, outstanding performances across the board for them. 9 gold, 6 silver, and 10 bronze medals. I think they'll be very pleased with their performances overall. As I said before, St. Lucia for me I have a soft spot for that country because of their sheer lack of numbers, but what they've been able to do. The Cayman Islands have shown great talent in sprinting in the last couple of years, so they weren't really much of a surprise given what we've seen from them over the years. And of course, Aruba picking up a medal in the 3,000 meters as well. But I think the country that would probably be most pleased with their performance at the Carista Games would be Trinidad and Tobago, because those 25 medals represent a significant improvement on what they've been able to do for the past few years. And I think those 9 gold medals, those 6 silver and 10 bronze would suggest that they are moving in the right direction, primarily because, as you know, Maria, they've been getting a lot of consultation from Jamaica in terms of how we do things here. There's been a lot of collaboration over the past couple of years with their sports minister coming here on a number of occasions to discuss those partnerships that they could benefit from. And it's clear what we're seeing now is that they're beginning to benefit from those partnerships and those collaborations with Jamaica. And of course, that the 25 medals that they've won would suggest that this is a platform that they're building towards even bigger numbers in the years to come. And when you look at the talent that they have at their disposal, Omari Scott and all of these youngsters coming through, you have to think that maybe in a year or two they're able to win 50 medals at the Carista Games. They do have the population, because I think maybe on Jamaica they are the largest, most populated country in the Caribbean in terms of the Carista participation. But the reality is that they have the means and they have the wherewithal, and clearly have the talent to do better at the Carista Games, and this is perhaps just the first step for them.
Yeah. All right, Leighton, we're going to leave it there. I like the comments that you made about J.D. Emmanuel. Obviously, a huge prospect there as the St. Lucians already celebrate Julian Alfred. But when we have some more time and expand on our discussions on the Carifta Games, I'm sure we'd want to spend a little time, too, to talk about Egan Neely, that outstanding Bahamian, who looks to have a really, really bright future ahead of him, as Emmanuel and so many others that we saw over the weekend have from a prospective standpoint. But thanks, Leighton.
Yeah, man, just quick thing. Jamaica Archer had said that he's the next Usain Bolt. Normally, you'd think these things are hyperbole, but in this instance, I'm thinking that he might be onto something.
Okay, Leighton Eva, thanks a lot, man. Yeah, Jamaica Archer, the president of athletics in the Bahamas, spoke glowingly about this young man and how they would dominate the 4x4s, both the under-17s and under-20s, and they did, beating the Jamaicans impressively to take gold medals there. We go to break. We still have some more track and field to talk on the other side of the break. Back in a moment.